Here with Dana Lewis Ambrose, lecturer at H. South Community College, author. What does she do? She's the coordinator of the Center for Professional Development and Community Education.
You got it right.
I got it right this time? Yeah, that's a long name.
It's growing
Good to
on
see
you.
you.
Same here.
How's everything? How's the book going?
Well, it's generated a lot of interest within the last couple of weeks and months. And of course, the book is not only being sold here, it's being sold internationally. So, and you know, it's getting around. It's, from what I can see, it has gotten as far as Australia. So,
Really?
yeah.
And what is the international response?
Well, I haven't really gotten any feedback personally from anyone, but I know some persons have indicated that they wanted to have it purchased so that they can actually begin to lecture from it, deliver courses, and include the material in there. So there is interest being developed. Of course, the book is still very young. It's not a year old yet, so it has a way to go. And I think it's one of those projects or products, let's say, that I think over time people will get to appreciate it much more than, you know, initially.
Well, that's why I asked you about the international feedback, because it's quite a definitive and detailed work. The moving from infancy to young adulthood, a contemporary view of developmental Virgin Islands. It's got a lot of data that you know. I think people like me would like to have or wanted for a long time, and perhaps didn't know where to look or thought that the data wasn't available. And I was fascinated how you found all this information. How did you find all this information?
Well, well, some of it was research that was actually done. So it's actually information that was collected. But
So it was
also
available all the time, and we just don't know where to look for the data?
actually, I would say that data is always available. It's just that sometimes we don't zoom in as much as we should. I find that the newspapers in the Virgin Islands, they publish a lot of data. I'm not sure if people realize that. And basically what I did over the years is just compile it. And of course there's other data that's coming from sources, because you might say, well, you can't find data on the Virgin Islands, but there are international organizations that have data on the Virgin Islands as well. And they're compiling
they
data.
have their own personal uses for that,
Right.
for that compilation.
Yeah, so there are ways to find data out there, and it's just a matter of ensuring that the data is accurate and as timely as required going forward.
This is what your second, third book?
That's my first book.
Okay. But you have a lot of writings.
Oh yeah, I have.
You have a
I
lot of
have
writings.
quite
You
a
publish
few.
a lot of writings, because that's what made me think it was more than one book.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually more familiar with publishing in journals and newsletters, things of that nature. However, the opportunity came for a book to actually be put together, and actually each of the chapters in the book are different research that was done over time. So it was still done piecemeal, but then what I was able to do is recognize that these different research products could be compiled together by trying to connect them all with one particular theme, which in particularly is national development.
Why this book? What's the motivation for this book and about the BVI? People say, well, you're not from here, you know, but you've compiled all this information about the BVI, valuable information that's very usable and needed. And what's the motivation?
Well, yes, I'm not from here. But what I would say here is that if you have a gift and you have the ability to do something that can benefit the society that you're presently in, I think you are doing not only yourself a good, but you're doing the entire society a good as well. And you're also using God's gifts as they should be. So for me, this was just like second nature. It's something that comes automatic. I'm the type of person that if I have an ability or a skill, I'm going to use it rather than have it wither and, you know, fall by the wayside. And I would also add here that in my former capacity as a lecturer, where I used to deliver lectures in economics, a lot of what you find in this book is stuff that I would have interjected in those courses so as to make the information more realistic or applicable to the class, rather than just teaching international models that don't necessarily fit into a small open economy. So I have had to use the information over time, and I think that you recognize then that yes, this is something that I was able to use in the classroom, but I think that it may be more useful if it is expressed or shared in public or to a wider audience, so that people can recognize really what has happened over time within the Virgin Islands, because we always try to look at things in a microscopic from a microscopic perspective, and this book takes all of those little bits and puts it together and gives you a holistic perspective. And so I think that with recent discussions in terms of the direction of the territory, the material, I had it there, and I felt that it would be an injustice to just have it there left to myself.
And we don't look at history from this type of perspective, as you know, where did we come from? What was our culture like? How did we get from no electricity to electricity? You know, how do we get from dirt roads to paved roads?
Right.
You know, how do we get from rowboats to boats with engine? How do we get from brick ovens to gas stoves and refrigerators and cars, and how that happened? How did you see that development?
Well, I've been here now for 12 years, and so there are little things that you can pick up. And if you really have a good background in economics, you see things from that perspective most of the time. But I also had a business background, and I've also looked into other areas. In particular, one of my pet areas is globalization, and so that is where the book starts, really, by looking at globalization and how it has impacted the territory, by looking at now each individual key area or sector, and seeing how the territory has responded to international pressure or to other factors happening around it, from whether environmental to economic. And so the book starts from that perspective, and then it delves into how the territory now is relating to other smaller territories within the Caribbean. So you see that the whole issue of CARICOM and to a lesser extent OECS comes into play, and it looks at that relationship. It looks also at those institutions themselves and how the BVI perceives those institutions going forward.
And I want to ask you how the BVI perceive those those institutions. But there were some key decisions that were made, say in the 60s, that brought us in this direction. And it was like we came to a fork in the road. We could have gone in one direction, or we could have gone in this direction. And I think that's illustrated in decisions of Chief Minister Stout in the selection of the development of tourism as a product for sale.
Yeah.
You know, from an agrarian economy. We could have said, well, okay, let's try to develop agriculture, remain a small society, a closed society, and have that comfortable, laid back life. We wouldn't have perhaps so quickly all the modern amenities, but our social fabric may have remained more intact.
Yeah. I do think that even though what you're saying is true, I think it's natural to want to develop. You know, some people might say, well, you know, every form of development is not necessarily good, but if you have a product that people will want, I think you're only going to do yourself some good by at least exploring what are the possibilities. And I think basically that's what happened. Not to say that agriculture was not important, but you wanted to see betterment and more opportunity for the people in general. And so moving into tourism and other sectors, I think was just taking advantage of the opportunities. And any growing society will do that because you want better for your people. The thing is that when you are developing and you are taking advantage of opportunities, you also have to look for what are the I don't want to say the consequences, but what comes along with those opportunities, and
how
evidently
how you manage what could possibly be negatives,
right? And evidently the book also points in some instances to that, and so it's just a matter of managing what's happening. You're not going to get it right all the time, but when you look back, you can say, well, this worked or this didn't work, and that allows you now to, if you're at the crossroads, say, well, okay, is this the direction that you want to continue in? And if it is, based on what has happened in the past, how can we move forward?
Now, you talk about the relationship and the perception of the people of the Virgin Islands with the regional institutions. And I remember us thinking as Virgin Islanders that it was a good thing that we didn't join the Federation, right? And how do you see those decisions, and how do you see our relationship to our other Caribbean brothers and sisters, islands, other small state economies, and the institutions that try to give those economies and those islands a measure of power in the power relationship in the international community?
Well, I always think that I don't think there's a graduate that came out of the University of West Indies that didn't think that CARICOM was a good thing. I think it's something that they indoctrinate into you. But evidently CARICOM had issues, and it still continues to have issues. Even the smaller organization, the OECS, has issues. However, going forward, I think that these institutions have a lot of promise and can provide greater opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to accept everything in principle that they want to have. You have to, of course, look at your own best interest, and I think that is what the Virgin Islands has been able to do. And it doesn't mean that they are behind the rest of the Caribbean. I don't think so. I think actually the Virgin Islands has been able to boldly state their position and stand by it over time. However, I think also, even though that may have been your position before, it may be a good thing to reconsider or to look at the possibilities of what could begin going forward in terms of CARICOM, or rather the Caribbean developing a market in which the Virgin Islands can be a part. Now, some may say that, well, we don't really produce anything of significance, or that, we would be the ones who would be paying out the most rather than benefiting. I think in everything, even if you look at the tourism product itself, and that's something that I think the Caribbean has not been able to really look at. We compete with each other for tourists internationally, but I don't think we recognize that we can be our own tourists within the region.
We could have that. We could share that market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how does isn't globalization, because you do focus on globalization. Isn't globalization going to eventually, and perhaps has already started, to push us in the direction of embracing the institutions and the institutions themselves are beginning to show more of their value?
Yeah.
Particularly in the globalization context.
Yeah. From that perspective, of course, it would be beneficial to align yourself with organizations that hold the same or have the same perspective as you would. Of course, what I think needs to be done, and what needs to be done in all the territories, not just the Virgin Islands, is to state your position and let them know that this is your position and why you hold it. And I think if we be honest with each other, we would get a lot further, rather than everybody's just skirting around the issues. Just deal with them out front and move forward and recognize that is it. Look, for example, the UK is part of the European Union. They don't spend the same currency, but they get along because they've recognized that
all the things they have in common.
Right, all the things they have in common, and they say, well, we're not moving from this position, and it's respected. Yeah. And I think the same thing can happen with the Virgin Islands, with other Caribbean states. So you just let them know what your position is.
No, on managing the BVI economy, local economy, you talk about things like price control, because we have managing an economy where you import everything, basically 95 to 99% of what you use, and which means that you have little or no control of the pricing mechanisms and the pricing structure. And then being a small economy trying to rely on competition to moderate prices seems to be a futile endeavor. But still, when you talk about price control, people immediately think of a socialist or communist measure.
Yeah. The thing is, in the book, I do indicate that price control is something that has worked, and it has worked in the United States, it has worked in England, it has worked all over the place. People automatically think that you're going to set us a price ceiling or a floor, and it means that you can't go above or below that. There are other forms of price control where you can actually remove import duties or provide subsidies for certain types of sectors that you think are vulnerable to the market, agriculture in particular.
Yeah.
So price control there are various forms of it, and what the book is basically just saying is that, you know, you may want to look at all the possibilities, not just one possibility, because it outlines a whole series of them.
And we got to take a break. But what's interesting about that as well to me is that we frown at these measures, and sometimes the developed world, quote unquote, developed world, don't want us to engage in these measures to protect to act in our own self-interest. But when you look at their behavior, they are full speed in incorporating a lot of these measures into their economic model.
As I said, price control, it has been used in the United States, it has been used in the UK, and they do it for whatever reason they had to. And of course, if you know that you are a developing economy, there may be some sectors that need a little help or assistance, and price control basically helps those sectors so that they are not at a disadvantage due to, of course, imported products that come in at a much cheaper price and rate.
At a price control rate, at a subsidized rate.
At a subsidized rate.
Agricultural products.
And I do think if you really go through the history, you recognize that agriculture is something that the United States in particular pushes.
Yes.
And they help as much as they can.
As they can.
Yeah.
And disrupt other economies.
Yeah, well.
We're going to talk a little bit about disruption when we come back. Keep it locked right in Spotlight. I'm having an interesting conversation on economics and development of the BVI with author Dana Lewis Ambrose. Just published a new book, Moving from Infancy to Young Adulthood, Contemporary Review of the Development of the Virgin Islands. Make sure you get the book. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Don't go away.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and H. Lavity Stout Community College.
Welcome back to Spotlight. Having a conversation with Dana Lewis Ambrose that I don't want to end. He is just fascinating. She just wrote a new book, Moving from Infancy to Young Adulthood, a contemporary review of the development of the Virgin Islands. It's a really important book, very important book. You need to go out and get this book. Where is the book available?
Primarily, it's sold at the college right now. The copies are out, and they're expecting a new shipment sometime next week.
Are you going to get it on iBooks? Amazon?
Oh, it's already there. It's already on the international websites. It's on a lot of websites, to be quite honest. But locally, primarily, that's where you'll find it. HLSEC.
Because I like iBooks. You know.
Yeah, you can get it electronically. Yeah.
And it's really important to have. It gives you a lot of information about the development of the Virgin Islands. You know, particularly from the 60s. You know, 50 years, 60 years ago, up until present. And you're talking about globalization. How are we managing globalization in your view? Because globalization seems to me to be becoming an economic disruptor.
Yeah, globalization in a sense basically slowly erases national borders, where you become more open to external factors, whether that is economic factors or cultural factors. The moving of people in its own right is a form or part of globalization. So anytime you have people moving from one territory to the next, that will impact your country from either economic perspective, a social perspective, a cultural perspective.
Let's talk about product movement, though. Let's talk about a product movement, because that to me is really a fundamental attacker, a fundamental attack on, say, nationalism. And when you have stores and businesses in the BVI that can't sell their products, they have lost their market to companies on the internet. That to me is a very, very serious development. Movement of products, and we seem to be, and the developing world and the Caribbean region in particular, in small island states and the Caribbean in general, the small island states in particular, seem to be unable to cash in on the giant market that the internet is.
Yeah, the internet is a prime product of globalization.
Yes. The facilitator, actually.
Is the facilitator. But what I would say here is that if you know that these things exist, how do you respond to it? And I think that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Do we sit down and just complain and say this is unfair?
How do we respond to it? In your view, how do we respond
I
to
think you meet your competitors where they're at. What are they? How can they produce, or how can they market, or how can they sell their product at the low prices that they can do? What are we doing to see if we can maintain the same quality of a product, but be competitive? Or do we establish ourselves as this is a quality product of which a lot of steps or a lot of procedures go into play that cause it to get to this point, which means now we have to be able to tell the story as to why our product is more expensive and then sell that. It's just like the whole idea about a BMW versus a Toyota. Why is a BMW more expensive than a Toyota? Because it's the brand, of course.
But it's got all the features.
It has all the features.
It parks itself.
Yeah. But
you got a special feeling.
But they have established themselves as the premier product of the market. And that's what I'm saying.
How do we brand our stuff?
Yeah. How do you brand yourself? And I think that is perhaps the key thing. If for example, I think there was a recent article that was published that indicated that the Virgin Islands was in the category of one of the more expensive territories.
So for vacation, yes.
Right. Okay. If that is a fact, then you need to be able to justify that, or rather say, okay, yes, but when people come there,
this is what they get.
This is what they get.
Yes.
And so there's
worth it.
It's worth it.
There's
no question.
The extra dollars is worth
right.
it.
But when you start being an expensive destination, and then the quality of the product
is not worth it,
then you have a problem. So that is what you have to be able to determine. What is it that you want to establish yourself as? Do you want to establish yourself as a higher end destination? And these are the type of tourists, or this is the product market that we are, the target market that we are going after. So therefore you have to make that particular decision. And I see it the same way with service, retail stores, everything. You have to establish yourself.
In your view, then we're not handling the internet onslaught
I think that in general, we can do more. We just need to maybe make more effort.
I had an experience. Forgive me for interrupting. When we finally 3 o'clock, I can see the numbers going down. I had an experience. I was making a purchase the other day, and I found what I wanted. But then when it came for the company to deliver, it was on the internet. Come to deliver. I had a problem getting the product because the company started making excuses about the product, challenges with the product. And I had correspondence back and forth with this individual.
Okay.
And one of the correspondents said, you have the impression that because on the internet it's a giant store, but this is just a mom and pop store. And I was shocked that he said that to me.
Okay.
That this is a mom and pop store, and I had a
Right.
death in the family, and I had to bury my sister, and you seem to be not caring about the challenges that I'm having.
Right.
And I was like, what?
That wasn't a BVI company.
No, it was a
right,
it was
right,
a company.
Right.
Where was it? Somewhere in Texas or something.
Okay.
But anyhow, make a long story short, it dawned on me that many of these companies that we see on website with these fancy pictures and this elaborate website are one-man operations
Thank
on
you.
a computer in their house.
Oh, yeah.
And they ordering these cheap products from somewhere in China.
Right.
And they selling it all over the world.
Yep.
And you think you buying from a big company.
Yep.
And there is absolutely no reason why we in the BVI can't do the same thing with even the stores that we have.
Yeah, that's my point exactly, and not to say that you would use the same excuse that the gentleman did,
Right.
because I think
I
that
think
was
I think it was
I thought that was
really
too much-
stupid.
too much information.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really stupid. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
He does. You as the customer, you don't need to
You don't
know,
even have
know
that information.
right? But yeah,
But that is the challenge that we have here. Though we give out too much information
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
but that's
yeah.
another issue.
Yeah.
But
We can do
stores
it.
we can do it. And we
We
could
can do it.
increase our market share globally by having these websites and selling the same products
and
that we have.
there's some businesses here that do it.
Yeah.
But
that
the
should-
creation of a website actually is not that expensive right now. You might just need someone to manage it for you. But even I think it's something, and it really depends on what you want to be able to do.
But is that something that we should be really focusing on, getting all our businesses on the web in order to capitalize on that international
Not
market?
necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily.
To combat that
I think there's
intrusion into
certain-
our market and that disruption into our
I
market.
think there's certain markets where yes, that would be wise. For example, hoteliers, restaurants. I think they need to get their information out there so that people know where they are, so that if they come to the territory, you start asking about these different establishments.
How the businesses like Infinite Solutions, for example, which is an electronic company, sell their iPad minis when they have so much overhead, they gotta pay duty, and they can't buy at the low price because they buy small quantities. They have all these challenges purchasing. They purchase at a higher price, have to sell at a higher price, where the individual can get on the internet and buy from the international supplier, the same supplier that they buy from, and get it here for a cheaper price than is it here in their store. How do they deal with that disruption? Because it seems to be like they can't survive in that kind of business environment
I think
if they don't get on the internet.
I think businesses generally, have to sit down and have a conversation with the government when it comes to certain issues, and not to say that government can solve everything, but clearly, if you are at a disadvantage due to import duties and stuff like that, that falls into the realm of price control, and it is technology. And if you are talking about your society being ahead of the game technologically, then I don't see any reason why products of that nature should carry heavy penalties
And
or
duties and so on.
of that sort.
We've fallen on the eternal clock. But it's a fascinating book. It's a fascinating book. Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's
thank
a
you.
great job. A lot of information. It's certainly at least a reference manual.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. At least a reference manual. And it's my reference manual. That when I want to find out something, some statistics, I could go and I could look.
Yeah.
And I wanted to discuss the issue of nationalism. You
Right.
mentioned the issue of nationalism in there. That's an important discussion that I would really love to have. And perhaps you could come back and we could talk about some of the other things that's in the book. But it's a whole bunch of information in the book. Moving from infancy to young adulthood, a contemporary review of the development of the Virgin Islands by Dana Lewis Ambrose, a fantastic compilation of information, statistics, different ideas and views and philosophies. You need to really you wanted to say something?
No, well, what I was going to add is that also there is another book that is available in the bookstore. It's not written solely by me, but I was fortunate enough to have worked with Marlene Penn-Trotman.
Yes.
And we did a chapter on okra fungi. And I think it is a book for those persons who may not want to read statistics, as Cromwell is reading statistics.
Well, it's more, your book is more than statistics. I wouldn't chalk it up to that.
But may be interested in recipes and stuff of that nature. This book is also available. And as I was saying before, when we did the launching for my book, I was very pleased to have worked with Marlene on this. And I think it's a book that you can give as a gift to someone. It carries 60 recipes from islands all over the world, and the BVI is featured with their dish okra fungi. So it's a good book to also invest in.
It's a taste of the islands, 60 recipes and stories from our world of islands by Marlene Penn.
Well, it's edited. It's a book. It has various authors, but the editors are Anne and Godfrey Baldacchino.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a good book. Yeah. It's a good book as well.
Yeah.
But certainly, and your book is available at the
HLSCC bookstore,
and you need to pick up a copy. Yeah. And you could also order it on Amazon.
You can order it on Amazon. You can order it on the publisher's website, Cambridge Scholars Publishing. But it's even in Barnes and Noble. It's all
everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Cool.
All the famous bookstores.
Thanks again for coming by. Thanks again for the work that you're doing, for the contribution to the territory. I think this is a really important contribution, and we really need it to give it a look, a read, and pick up your copy. Yeah. Moving from Infancy to Young Adulthood, a contemporary review of the development of the Virgin Islands by Dana Lewis Ambrose. Yeah. Check it out. Yeah. Next week is going to be interesting. Next week we're going to shine a spotlight on the New Life Foundation. The New Life Foundation is a foundation coming out of the New Life Baptist Church. I'm always fussing at the churches for not doing more in the community, and certainly the New Life Baptist Church happens to be one of those churches that are really involved in the community. The New Life Foundation has been assisting people in need here in the British Virgin Islands, in the Caribbean region, and in Africa. And we need to support some of the efforts that it's making. And one of the efforts it's making is building a church school in Africa. And we need to help to fund that school. So next Tuesday on Spotlight, we are going to be talking about the New Life Foundation, and we're going to have a telethon. We're going to be raising some funds for our brothers and sisters in Africa to help to get them proper education facilities and offer some assistance. We've been blessed with a lot, and so it's always good to give to others. So make sure you tune in to Spotlight next week. Spotlight is seen, of course, every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. and rebroadcast every Sunday afternoon at 2:30. I continue to thank you for your kind words of encouragement, your suggestions, and your criticism. Continue to email me at jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. I'm Edjuenka, reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessings.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and H. Lavity Stout Community College.